All right. Well, it looks like we are live here. Um, Everyone, I want to thank you all for joining me here today for our small business workshop on a Friday afternoon, no less. We've assembled a great group of local small business experts who can help work through some of the common issues that small businesses owners are facing as we continue to weather this public health and economic crisis. Joining me here today is William Furman, the Senior Area Manager for the U.S. Small Business Administration in the North Charleston alternate work site. William has been with the SBA since 2013, where he serves the 10 coastal counties in South Carolina, providing lender services, government contracting programs, and economic development to small businesses. And we're also fortunate to be joined by Michelle Abraham, who is the state director of the South Carolina Small Business Development Centers, position she's been in since I believe 2010. The South Carolina Small Business Development Center's goal is to advance South Carolina's economic development by helping entrepreneurs grow successful businesses. During the COVID-19, they are providing specific assistance to help small businesses manage the consequences of this pandemic. And then, of course, rounding out our panel is Hannah Horn, VP of Public Policy and Programs at the Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce. That chamber is a great resource for businesses working to safely reopen and thrive. William, Michelle, Hannah, thank you all for joining us today. I know your expertise will be invaluable to Lowcountry small business owners. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to be with us here today. Since this crisis began, I've worked with Congress to pass bipartisan legislation to ease the burden that South Carolinians are facing. And this includes loan programs and resources for small businesses and their workers, direct economic relief for American families, enhanced unemployment benefits, and of course, increased funding for states, municipalities, and hospitals. And our office has worked tirelessly to assist Lowcountry residents. We've held 65 virtual events, assisted almost 400 South Carolinians with unemployment claims, helped 278 individuals recover their stimulus payments, and have secured millions of dollars in unemployment assistance and small business loans. But the one thing that's pretty clear is that there's a lot more work to be done. And Congress recently extended the PPP deadline to August 8th. So, and we're hopefully going to be passing another coronavirus response package this month. And I'm going to continue to use my position to continue fighting for specific Lowcountry priorities to be included in any upcoming stimulus package. So I recognize that, we all want things to go back to normal. But as the drastic rise in COVID-19 cases in our state, and specifically here in Lowcountry, has shown us, we're not through the worst of this virus. And I want to implore each and every one of you to continue to take this virus seriously, wash your hands, clean, frequently touch surfaces, and most importantly, wear a mask in public and continue to practice social distancing. So I want to thank everyone who has submitted a question ahead of time. If you have questions that come up during this hour, you can enter them in the chat box. Just remember to leave your contact information, name and email address, so that my office can get back to you. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into it and get started with some of the questions that have already been submitted. First question, I think, deals with the SBA EIDL waiting period. I've heard from many small businesses that aren't getting, that aren't able to get through to the SBA to follow up on a loan application. And I understand the SBA has been inundated with loans since the COVID-19 pandemic began. And my office is always here to look into any challenges that small businesses are facing with federal agencies. So we can specifically start an inquiry. If you need anything, you can call my office at 843-352-7572, and our office can assist you. William, let's start and get in conversation on what the best way for applicants to check on their loan status with the SBA or their lender.
Yeah, it's if we'll talk about economic injury disaster loan first. As you know, we started out and SBA was pretty well overwhelmed with the response and the number of applications that we were receiving, and there was a significant wait time. And so, you know, when the first round of PPP expired, we closed the portal for EIDL as well. And SBA was able to catch up on some of those applications. There is still a significant wait time. You know, the portal has reopened and SBA is accepting economic injury disaster loans now. And, you know, I do see that that turn time or processing time of applications increasing again. And as a matter of fact, we're still trying to finish up some of those applications that were submitted back in early April. But I think and I hope that most of those have been cleared out. You know, if individuals have, if they have applied and it's been since early April, I have no issue and no problem with them contacting me. They do have the disaster customer service number that they can call. However, I do understand that there's significant wait times on that number at the current time. And so, you know, just use customer service. They can also email, which may be a little bit easier. It's www. Or it's disaster customer service, disaster customer service, all one word, at sba.gov. And that may be an easier way instead of trying to, you know, call and have to be put on hold with the customer service number.
And William, what's the general time frame for approval for an EIDL?
Oh, wow. It's all over the board. As I mentioned, I've dealt with some people this week that had applied in early April, and so their application is still in process. They haven't been declined, but their application is still in process. Now, I've heard from others that, you know, when they submitted, when the portal reopened, theirs was, they actually got processed pretty quickly. So there's no easy answer on that. Again, I think the further we go into this now that it's been reopened, the turn time or processing time is starting to become longer again. And so I guess my message would be if anybody has not applied, if they're considering applying, the sooner they apply, the better that they will be.
And are there any best practices or any pointers you can give folks to make sure their application is submitted correctly or processed in a timely manner, or is it simply just the timing of it?
Yeah, you know, I think you just hit the nail on the head. You need to, you know, I would say they need to take their time, slow down, and make sure that they enter all their information correctly. Because if they don't enter the name of their business as it appears on their bank account, or if their bank account doesn't match, you know, the legal name of their business, if their account and routing number is off by a digit, all of those are going to cause that application to either be kicked back or just declined. And then they have to start basically all over with a reconsideration process. So I guess that would be my biggest thing, is just take your time, make sure you enter the information. And if you don't know, don't guess. I've had a couple of other kind of sad stories this week where people put information they didn't really know, and so they did what they thought was best, but they didn't know. And it's better to call SBDC, you know, call SBA and ask about what they're entering on that application to make sure they get it correct.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I
Sorry.
was just going to say, Joe, I just wanted to reiterate that, because what we've been seeing with a lot of the businesses we've worked with who've gotten denied or had problems, it was because of maybe one digit, one simple error, or something they missed on an application, or they filled out incorrectly, and it gets kicked back, and then you have to start all over at the back of the queue again. So pay attention, be careful. You know, make sure you're getting it done completely, and we're happy to help with that if there are questions.
Hannah, do you hear anything down there as far as what practices or what things who are successful getting these things processed in a timely manner are doing differently from others?
I haven't heard of any significant delays from my business owners. They quickly get a response that says, we have received your application, and you just hang tight, and the money shows up in their account. I think that they're waiting on a long trail of paperwork to show up and sign something or have to go to a bank. But with this SBA EIDL loan, it doesn't work like that at all. What my colleagues are saying is exactly right. Make sure you have that data. That application asks for operational costs. It asks for cost of goods sold over the last 12 months. It asks for the number of employees, and that is key as well. When you're filling out that application, the number of employees that you have, either right now, and that's something, Michelle and William and Nuance, is it how many you have right now? Is it how many you've averaged over the last 12 months, but the loan is based on that? And then finally, towards the end, that application says, do you want to apply for the $10,000 EIDL grant? And that particular grant, as you know, how it interfaces with PPP, William can tell you best, because we've gotten more guidance now as well about those businesses that have taken advantage of that $10,000 grant that, they're hoping that they don't have to pay back. But William, we've since learned that there is a nuance there in how it interfaces with loan forgiveness, if he wants to explain more.
Yeah, if I can, I'll jump in on that, because that is a point of confusion for a lot of people. And so if you have received both an EIDL loan and a PPP loan, and you receive the EIDL advance, that EIDL advance is going to be deducted from any PPP forgiveness that you receive. And so just to give an example, if you applied for an EIDL loan in advance, and you got a $10,000 advance, and then you turned around and applied for a PPP loan, and you received a PPP loan of $100,000, and that loan was going to be fully forgiven. You used all the funds for payroll as you should, or non-payroll expenses, and you used them in the time frame specified, then you would receive forgiveness for that entire loan amount. But if you have received that advance, it's going to be deducted from the forgiveness. So in this situation, 100,000 PPP, fully forgivable, $10,000 EIDL advance, you're going to end up with a $10,000 balance on your PPP loan. And so that balance will be it's going to be at an interest rate of 1%. And depending on when you received your loan, it's either going to have a term of 2 years. If you received the loan before June 5th, it's 2 years. If you received the loan after June 5th, that was extended to 5 years. And that was part of the some of the changes that came about through the Flexibility Act.
And so, Congressman, that's just one example of some of the ways that on the back end is, we often say that we're flying in a plane that we're building as we fly it. The landing gear on this loan program still hasn't even been built out for the banks to substantiate. And I know that I have all the grace in the world for the banks in the position that they're in, and SBA as they're working on this for the good of small business. But those little nuances and these new rules that keep coming up, or why small businesses need to stay so in touch with SBA and with the small business development centers and with their SCORE partners and with their chambers to know what the latest guidance is. Because again, $10,000 at the end of you thought you were going to have all of this forgiven is not cool with a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is too, if you're somebody that's listening or watching today and you've applied and you haven't heard anything, you need to watch your bank account, because the money will show up without you necessarily getting notice. And so we've had a number of people that have come to us really upset. I've been waiting and waiting, and we tell them, go back. Have you checked your bank account in the last 2 weeks? And there it is, sitting there waiting on them. So make sure you're paying attention to that too.
And William, for people listening in, after that application is complete and submitted, at what point in time should they start to press or follow up or take next steps?
If I were applying today, I would give it, at least a couple of weeks to see what happened. I mean, I've had people that told me that they applied and, it was just a matter of a couple of days and they had already received their idle advance and they were working on their loan. And I guess that's another important point to make is that, when you apply and if you request the advance, that is the first thing that you're going to see. There is no paperwork associated with that. And those are the funds that just show up in your bank account. And so that is the advance. It does not have to be repaid. And then at some point after that, the Office of Disaster Assistance is going to continue to process that application, and then they will follow up with an offer of a loan. So SBA actually calculates what they calculate the working capital needs of the business, and they will offer the loan. And you can accept the full amount of the offer, or if you would desire to take a lesser amount. Loans of $25,000 or less are unsecured. Once you break that $25,000 threshold, then SBA is going to collateralize the loan in the best position available for collateral. The terms are 30 years, so you can accept the term for 30 years, or if you wanted to adjust that, you should be able to reduce that. But the other important thing that I think, and I've seen this a couple of times this week, people have, if they offer you the maximum amount, you need to think about that very long and hard before you accept a lesser amount. I've had some people this week that wanted to keep their loan lower. They reduced their loan amount, and now they have realized that they may have needed those additional funds. And you can't go back. It's a one-time deal. You can't come back and ask for more. Once you set that loan amount, it's set. So my advice is to accept the maximum amount of the loan. We don't know exactly how this is going to play out. You may not think you need the funds, but in the end, you very well may. And it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And so that's I guess a key takeaway I would like to offer as well.
That's one of the things that we can help with as well. If you've gotten the money or you're projecting that you're going to get the money and you're not sure whether you want to take it all, we can sit down with you, help you work through your projections, your cash flow, all of those factors that could impact your ability to pay back that loan and where and how you're going to be able to best utilize it. And our consulting services are free of charge. I'll put our website up on the chat box. But feel free to go to the website and just click on the blue button at the top that says sign up to request consulting, and we'll get back in touch with you usually within 24 hours, and we can walk you through any of that you want some help with. It's all confidential.
Okay. Excellent. That's of tremendous help. I know that my colleagues and I in Congress will be looking at a second relief package, and when we get back to DC in another week or so, because it's clear this pandemic is far from over, and most small businesses are still feeling the economic impact. As some of them have even have had to shutter their businesses due to state orders on the closures of like entertainment venues, like movie theaters. I saw on the paper today the Holy City Magic was closing its doors. One of the questions though comes from owner of a movie theater, Paul, who has the Terrace Theater on James Island, which I know I've always enjoyed going to, and it's a great venue over there. But he'd like to know if it's still possible for shuttered businesses like his to apply for another round of EIDL in the future. Is the SBA considering a special accommodation for businesses that are still forced to be closed?
Right now, there is only, we don't know what Congress will do, and we've seen the rules change multiple times, and but for right now, if you've received your loan, it is a one-time loan, one loan per event. So unless there's another round of stimulus, you have the PPP, and then you have the idle. And so you're only able to obtain one of those at the current time.
Okay, so
Congressman, I would just, again, as you head back to Washington, just know that what we're calling P4, which is the fourth round of stimulus discussions, that those hardest hit industries really are the focus of this next round. That the movie theaters that we hear about, restaurants as well, that still continue to find themselves. I mean, today the executive order of having to stop alcohol sales in South Carolina at 11 p.m. by governor's orders. There's a lot of alcohol revenue. The margin on alcohol is really big for our businesses. And I'm not suggesting that wasn't it isn't about whether that was a good decision or not. I'm just saying that we are now, as we start rolling back some of the freedoms, and we're having to put additional protections in place, businesses may see that ebb and flow of productivity. They may see an ebb and flow of labor, and that we look at those businesses that need it most. The other thing that I'll say as well is, businesses that don't take advantage of the idle loans, those businesses that don't take advantage of PPP, do not forget that the employee retention tax credits that are also in the CARES Act could very well be a great suggestion for businesses that find themselves coming online here in the next couple of months. Those employee retention tax credits are good through the end of the year, up to $10,000 per employee. I think that you're going to find that a lot of businesses that weren't eligible for PPP or just didn't want to go that route, that are going to be paying their payrolls anyway, could get that reimbursement on their payroll as a payroll tax credit. That's huge. I really hope businesses will do the research on that particular. But you can't do PPP and employee retention tax credits. So just to make that distinguish there.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Hannah. Michelle, William, anything else to add on that note, or?
Well, I do think, there are tax implications to these programs. There are, a lot of other issues that go beyond just getting this money initially. So, many businesses have accountants and attorneys that can help them, but don't hesitate to reach out and use any of the resources that any of us that are on this call or others. We're here to help you. That's what we want to do. And, if we don't have the answers, we'll go help you find them to ease a little bit of that burden off of you trying to do it all on your own.
And since we're on the notion of taxes, let's, I know there's been some growing concern from local small business owners on what taxes they may owe next year on any loans that they receive to help make it through the impacts of COVID-19. So let's talk about that, or whether or not PPP loans, are they tax exempt?
I'll kind of defer, if it's a loan and they ended up paying the loan, of course, it's not taxable. If the loan is fully forgiven, I'm not in a position to really give an answer on that, honestly. Maybe my counterparts may want to jump in on that one if they have better information.
I don't think we know. I think that's still one of that's still guidance that I know that our SCORE partners and others in the community are watching. How the rules are going to change, what that's going to look like at the end of the year in terms of that. Is that going to be counted as revenue? Are you going to pay taxes on that? Will it change?
Yeah, because traditionally loans for the most part aren't considered income that can be taxable, but it does bring up a good notion on loans that are forgiven. I know we've seen in the past where, I know during the 2008 housing crisis, whenever these loans were written down, a lot of these loans that are written down or forgiven were viewed as a form of income. So that's something that we should be mindful of. Obviously, let's talk about can a small business owner deduct PPP payroll from their normal payroll deduction? How does that work, or how you see it play out?
I don't understand the question.
Well, whether or not a small business owner, can take the PPP payroll and deduct it from their normal payroll.
I don't know the answer to that. William, have you seen that?
Yeah, again, I think a lot of this is still just playing out, and we really don't have all the answers, unfortunately. But I mean, as far as tax purposes, if that's kind of where we're going, I think you would still be able to count that payroll, but again, it's I think we're just really waiting on additional guidance there, both from some of that will have to come from even the IRS.
Right. Well, and I think everyone's the PPP has been the most popular program. It's been like a lifeline to thousands of small businesses across the Lowcountry, and that program was set to end on June 30th, but with more than $120 billion still left in the funding, my colleagues and I in Congress just extended that application period through August 8th. So it's not too late for people to get their application in. Additionally, after hearing from small business owners across the Lowcountry, that flexibility was needed within that program to be eligible for 100% loan forgiveness. I joined a lot of my colleagues in Congress in passing the Ppp Flexibility Act, which addressed a lot of the concerns that a lot of small businesses had, particularly those in food and bev industry. And it changed the ratio for forgiveness from it was 75-25, or 75 had to go to payroll and 25 other expenses, to 60-40. And so it dropped that down to 60%. And that's good for, businesses maybe on King Street or other areas where they're seeing the rent gobble up a lot more of their business expenses compared to payroll. We've also extended it from, it used to be 8 weeks to 24 weeks. I know that's helpful for the restaurants and the other places that may have had to close, or a drastic cut. So, I mean, this can be for anyone here on the panel, but do you know what bank and community lenders in the Lowcountry, or which banks and community lenders in the Lowcountry are still accepting PPP applications if someone wants to get one in before the August 8th?
Yeah, that is definitely an issue right now.
Yeah.
Most of our local lenders, most of the brick and mortar lenders have stopped accepting PPP applications. They've kind of moved their sites to the forgiveness mode. But there's still alternatives that businesses can use to obtain PPP funding, and those are through our fintech and online lenders, and so they are still active with our PPP lending program, and that's what I'm recommending right now. If I've had several calls, and it's interesting because I've had really just a flurry of calls in the last couple of days. I really feel the momentum kind of building again for PPP. But the businesses have said that their local banks are not participating, and so I do have a list of fintech and online lenders that I can shoot out, and I'll give my email here in a minute on chat, and I'll be happy to provide that list to anyone that's still seeking a PPP loan. And definitely appreciate your work on the Flexibility Act. That is making a huge difference. The PPP loan is really based on 10 weeks of payroll. And so that gives that business the flexibility to use that in 24 weeks. So that's a huge benefit, and I think that's going to take the burden off of a lot of businesses that we're not able to open, and so definitely appreciate that work.
Yeah, as do we. And I will say, from a lot of the businesses that we've been working with in the last month or so, there's been a lot of frustration with finding lenders that would work with them on this program, because so many of the larger lenders have kind of closed their doors to it. But William has the whole list. We all are working with them. And if you, somebody that hasn't worked with one of these online lenders or alternative lenders and you have questions, again, any of us can help you understand that and get you targeted in the right direction. But they make it pretty simple. They're pretty straightforward in their process. So that's a positive thing.
I was on a call with Synovus Bank last week, and they were still accepting PPP loans, although they had kind of come to terms with the fact that most of those businesses that either needed a PPP loan probably would have already gotten it or thought that it would have expired. So they really didn't think that the additional time to apply for one was going to affect a lot of businesses. But the flexibility really helped. And I mean, I have been on the phone with small businesses with a calendar counting out 52 days, the 8 weeks, literally, July 4th, 5th, say, like making, until they knew what the, when that 8-week period was up from the date that loan originated, only for the rules to change in their favor. But they needed to know, okay, my payroll is paid on this day, so I need to make sure. And they were trying to make it work for their businesses, and the flexibility just went, oh, okay, we can spend this now how we need to, and we're not under those really tough rules.
Yeah, and that extending that from 8 weeks to 24 weeks, I think was a big help. But it probably also had I guess, what kind of advice would you all give to, for restaurant owners like Jocelyn, who was operating under that time frame of 8 weeks and in a hurry to spend that money before it got extended, and then now that it's extended, those funds are exhausted. You have any guidance or tips or resources available to those people who may have already gone through those funds?
Well,
my
there's
advice
still
would be to find somebody really, really smart like Michelle, and William's very smart too, but make sure I practice that. But find someone really smart like Michelle or a SCORE partner, but those Small Business Development Center. And like she mentioned before, put a pencil to your cash flow. Look at how much you have left to spend, or if you've exhausted that PPP. And now let's find a new normal, because your sales might look a whole lot different than a budget you put together in January. So take everything, to tear everything up and start from what what you're currently selling, and try to do some projections on revenue and expenses. And then again, Michelle and SCORE, that is what they are doing every day with small businesses. And if you're not taking advantage of their programs that are for you, oh, you're missing out on just the gift of peace that comes with knowing that your business is going to be okay.
And it's not just the financial piece of it. I mean, that is absolutely critical. And small businesses are dealing with a lot of cash flow issues now. Revenues are down. They've still got to pay all the bills, and dealing with those projections and all that. But thinking about other aspects of the business that are going to help you moving forward. Have you looked at pivoting some of your sales to an online platform so that you can continue to move products out the door? Have you looked at bringing in some new products, looking at changing your business model? And we can help you work through that. We've got access to all kinds of we can do market research for you and help you work through that, so that you're not just only paying attention to the financial side of it, but you're also looking at, okay, how do I rebuild my business and grow it and make sure that I'm going to be more sustainable as I move forward?
And Congressman, one other outfall that we might see after this, a little bit of a labor hangover, and that is, PPP, in order for you to receive loan forgiveness, require that you bring back that level of employment, the same number of full-time workers or part-time full-time equivalents. And so now that PPP is ending for a lot of these companies, they may find that their new normal doesn't support that many employees. So we're really watching, and again, I hope it's not the case. I do know that we have expanded out now an additional, I think, 10 weeks of unemployment insurance in South Carolina for those that have exhausted. But I'm talking about these folks that found themselves being, getting back on the payroll, and PPP was getting them back on the payroll. But now that PPP has ended, is that business really able to sustain that employee?
Yeah, and Hannah, that brings up another part of the Ppp Flexibility Act that I didn't address, which was that there was that key part in there that said businesses have to reopen fully in order for it to be forgivable. Well, in that latest bill, we made it so long as they're making a good faith effort, and provides a little bit, I think, of discretion to the SBA to determine which businesses are making a full, because sometimes, like you said, you could be trying to open up the doors, but because of either local ordinances or governor's orders or just your own protocols, you're not able to open, quote unquote, fully. So I think what folks are looking for, and it's in the name, is some flexibility. It's not a one size fits all. I mean, and all the businesses down there don't operate the same. They're on different models. So that flexibility, I think, is key, especially because people's number one concern, I think, when they get these loans is, what do I need to do to make sure it's forgivable? Because they do not want to be stuck with that price tag. And so, William, maybe you can speak to that. Like, when a business receives their PPP loan, what would you encourage them to do or not do in order to make sure they're on the right track to have that forgiven?
Yeah, so that's a good point, and SBA does provide that, what we call a safe harbor for the situation that you're mentioning, and so that does not count against them. And so SBA and Treasury have actually released now the applications for PPP forgiveness. And so I'd really like to talk about that for just a minute, because the first thing you need to know is, if you give me the rules, I'll play the game, right? And so now we more or less have the rules in those applications. And number one, the applications are out. However, SBA has not given the instructions to the lenders and banks to tell them what to do with applications so that they can get reimbursed from SBA. So first thing I would say is just kind of sit tight. If you're a business and you're ready to apply, I would just kind of sit tight, make sure you have all your documentation in order. You can go ahead and look at that application and make sure that you understand it. And if you don't, feel free to reach out, and we'll try to provide some clarification on that. But there are two applications. There is now an EZ application as well as the loan form. And so let me just read this real quick. In the EZ application, it applies to businesses that are self-employed or have no employees, or did not reduce their salaries or wages of their employees by more than 25%, and did not reduce the number of hours of their employees, or experienced reductions in business activity as a result of health directives related to COVID-19, and did not reduce the salaries or wages of their employees by more than 25%. So if you answer yes to any of those three statements, then you are eligible to use that EZ form. And so it makes it a little more simple, or really it makes it a lot more simple for those businesses that can use that EZ form. And if you use an EZ form, basically you're going to receive, those are for the businesses that are going to receive full forgiveness. And so take a look at those applications. There's a separate instruction sheet for each of the applications. So you have that, if you look online, the application is there, and then there's another document for the instructions. And that's very helpful. It reads fairly well. It's not too complex. So if you just read through that, I think that is going to answer a lot of questions for businesses as far as what forgiveness is. So we do have that piece out now. But again, you should expect some communication from your lender, from your banker, about how they are going to handle the forgiveness from their point of view. And they're waiting on SBA. So hopefully SBA will get that out before too long. And then just a reminder that these loans are deferred for 6 months. And so they are under full deferral. And so the business has that time to get that done. Now, once they, they can either, the covered period is either going to be the 8 weeks or the 24 weeks. After June 5th, it's 24 weeks, and they have 10 months after that covered period to actually submit their application for forgiveness. So just want to make sure that people understand that as well. A lot of people thought they had to submit their application for forgiveness at the day their covered period ended, and that is not the case. So just keep that in mind. You still need to be in a holding mode, though, at this point until SBA gets that information and instructions to the banks.
Okay. Let's pivot now and address Dan and Latson. He's got a question on 1099 employers. And I know my office heard from a lot of frustrated small business owners who largely employ contracted 1099s and who are not eligible for PPP loans. Through the CARES Act, I joined my colleagues in Congress in expanding unemployment benefits to cover the self-employed, the 1099 employees, as well as made these folks eligible for PPP loans. So this can be for anyone here, but what resources are there out there for small business owners like Dan and Latson that primarily employ 1099 workers?
If you I talked to a business today that really they employ or engage 1099s, which are contractors, and so they really didn't have any employees. But I would still encourage them. Number one, the contractors can apply for both EIDL and PPP as well as the businesses. So, and that was another thing, that extending the covered period from 8 to 24 weeks allowed. If you're an independent contractor, it gives you that full 10 weeks of payroll that you would get. So that was a big help. People may not realize that, but when it was 8 weeks, that independent contractor, they had no other expenses. They had no non-payroll expenses that they could claim for PPP. So they were restricted to 8 weeks. Well, they got 10 weeks, so they were missing out on the 2 weeks of payroll there. But when we extended it to 24 weeks, that gave them that they will be able to use all of their PPP funds, and the entire amount would be forgiven.
Yeah, I think that it was confusing in the beginning about those 1099s, because really and truly what you're dealing with are those 1099 workers or gig, the gig economy, the gig workers. They're applying for PPP too. They're applying for unemployment. They're in the game for themselves, and I don't mean it's a game, but they're going through the same process that you're going through as a business. So they can't be claimed twice. And so if that's the way that and many businesses may, if payroll is going to start to be a key performance indicator, or is going to be used in the future for more of these loan programs, our friends and partners at SCORE, we're talking about, making sure that that there's more, instead of just a lot of them. We had a lot of small businesses that simply took draws every week, or, they just use one credit card for everything. They pay for the car, they pay for the boat motor, they pay for everything with this one credit card. But really, if Lord forbid this ever happens again, but there needs to be just a real epiphany with all of our businesses that had a very loose financial structure to really come in under being able to document this. Because again, if this is going to be the way that loan programs or payroll is going to be calculated in the future, might be a good thing to go ahead and from this point on, especially if you started it with PPP and you know how to pay yourself and spend that kind of money in a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, stick with it and keep doing it, lest we have to do this again.
Thank you, Hannah. Let's talk about as we go, as we hopefully get on the backside, hopefully get through this, um, getting into reopening. And I think it's clear that we're seeing a spike in cases that, and I think that's the indicator we can't let our guards down when it comes to this pandemic. And we also can't expect our small businesses to survive another shutdown. I mean, there already been too many casualties, particularly in the food and bev industry. Like Cane's Rum Bar downtown, or Monero, or Nana Seafood and Soul downtown. That's just a few. Just yesterday, I was saddened to hear the closing of Charleston's, only Magic Club. Like I said earlier, the Holy City Magic. Um, I've been hearing concerns from small business owners who are anxious on how to continue to operate safely during this pandemic. And I know that DHEC and Accelerate SE have issued guidelines on their websites, and maybe Kaylin can throw that up in the chat box if she hasn't already. And those are good for small business owners as something to follow and kind of best practices. Michelle, what kind of advice do you have for small businesses who are facing these tough challenges as we see the reemergence of COVID-19?
It's a challenge. I think again they need to be paying really close attention to not only those guidelines, and they're published. The CDC guidelines are published on their websites as well as others. There are a lot of great tools out there that businesses can use in terms of signage and guidelines to make sure that they're protecting themselves, their employees, and their customers. But it's going to require continued diligence in managing the cash that we have right now, and finding ways, creative ways, to try to build sales without necessarily being able to pull in the full volume of customers, especially, for example, in a restaurant where you're maybe working at 50% capacity, and if you can't do enough turns like you do when you've got the full restaurant open, it's just really hard to generate enough revenue to make a profit. So really paying attention to all of those things that we've talked about and working through a plan. We have a checklist on our website that walks you through all kinds of different aspects of what you need to consider when you're reopening and trying to go through that recovery. So I would encourage people to look at our website and pull that up. There's a guide coming out that provides more background with it, and just sitting down with again, any of us that are there to help, knowing that you're not alone, and that the people in these organizations, we've walked the walk, we've owned businesses, we certainly not this kind of a situation, but we've lived it, and we'd like to be able to help you look at all those factors and plan it out and figure out how you can manage it best.
Hannah, you want to? How's the chamber working with local businesses to support these best practices, or what would you kind of advice would you give here?
A couple things. First of all, so our chamber led the initiative here for what's called the Path Forward, and there's actually a website, thepathforward.com, and we assembled nearly a half dozen, actually more than a half dozen, nearly a dozen different sector leaders together. So we have a small business sector, childcare, faith community, restaurants, home and villa, hotel, outdoor recreation, arts and culture. We assembled all of these thought leaders into different, chat rooms and said, let's put together best practices on a reopening strategy. And one thing that we found during COVID is, every business is different, even businesses within the same sector. One church is different than another church, or one restaurant is different than another, but putting together overarching themes about how they were going to keep their employees and customers safe. And then, of course, early on, there was the discussion about masks, and now that has been taken over from a policy standpoint as a law or ordinance. But what we're hearing from the 30,000 foot level, we just did a poll of our membership, and we got nearly 200 responses back so far. And I'll be sure to share this with your team whenever we compile it and get all the results in. But the question was asked, indicate your areas of deepest concern for business recovery. And like I said, I'll share this with you. The first one was health and safety of their employees. The second one was recovering client business or regaining customers. The third was adopting new work practices. And they're also on their ranking really high, and is something that we really need to keep front of mind, Congressman, is childcare and the return to work for these businesses and employees that have children at home that are still unsure as to what the reopening of the school strategy is going to be. Is it going to be a hybrid of at-home learning and not at-home learning? I was with a girlfriend last night having dinner, and she was telling me she has a 6-year-old, and she's like, I'm being told that I might have on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm going to have virtual classrooms at home. And she was like, I don't know how I'm going to tell my boss that I have to be home now on Tuesdays and Thursdays to teach my child. So we need to come up with a thoughtful way to, with the business community input as well, as to how to safely but effectively reopen schools so that our businesses have the employees, and that it doesn't penalize many moms that would be the ones that would probably be the ones at home with their children.
Yeah, great point, Hannah. And that's, I mean, I've got a 2-year-old, and he got sent home for a week because one of the teachers tested positive. And so, yeah, I mean, we can only get our economy up and running if our if our education system is on the right track too. So that's one other question, and I don't know if you all have the answer to this. I know certain businesses are handling it different ways. If an employee tests positive or has symptoms, I see different businesses going about it different ways, whether they shut down for 2 days or 4 days, and whether or not they test everyone in there before opening back up. Is there a standard operating procedure for that, or does it vary from business to business?
Well, let me just mention that DHEC has put out a really good Q&A of best practices, that if there was, if you had a customer come in, or if you have an employee that has a family member with it, I'll put that in the chat, send that to you guys, but it is a really, really good kind of flow chart that may help you as a business make a decision. And if nothing else, it's something in black and white that we all as a business community can get behind and say, okay, well, if that's what they're doing, then maybe we can all do it that way. But it's painful to, almost every day on Facebook, there's a new business that has said, we're shutting down for a couple of days because we have to do a deep clean because we have, an employee that was infected, or and it's just that stop and start and the disruption. And, for a restaurant, think about, all that food that would spoil, or because one person gets sick, you've got 20 others that aren't going to be on the payroll that night.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that, when you look at these procedures, there is no set procedure that's going to work for everybody. Every business is a little different, as Hannah said. And so it's really taking some of the guidance that our experts out there at DHEC and CDC have developed, and using a lot of their guidelines and their tools, and then figuring out what works for your business and is going to make you and your employees and your clients, your customers, feel comfortable with, coming back in again at whatever point that is. And there are so many resources out there in so many different places that people can access by industry segment, as Hannah said, and even within industry segments. So again, lots that you can work with, lots that you can pull from, and just following that guidance. But if you're starting to feel like you're confused and it's just too much to go through, and which site do I look at, which programs, again, there are others out here that can help you wade through all of that and try to make the process easier. Excellent.
And we're kind of running a little bit short on time. William, do you have any closing thoughts or anything else you'd like to share as we wind things down here?
Yeah, just a couple of things quickly. Going forward, there's one thing that I think a lot of people are not aware of. If we have a business that is in need of capital, not necessarily for disaster recovery, but if they're looking for an opportunity to expand or grow their business, SBA is providing 6 months of payments on all new loans that are made and closed and fully advanced by September 27th of this year. So that's just an opportunity that's out there, kind of an incentive. And granted, it's a challenging time. I do acknowledge that, but you know, for those businesses that are seeking financing, it's a good opportunity. SBA is already making payments on for 6 months for all SBA loans, whether it's 7A, 504, or micro loans. So that was a big help to all those SBA borrowers, and then new loans are going to receive that as well up through September 27th. And then finally, I just want to thank my partners here. Hannah and the Chamber has done a great job down in Hilton Head. I've been part of some of their calls, and they've just done a tremendous job. SBDC has stepped in and just done a great job as well. And in the Lowcountry in general, is just very fortunate to have the small business resources that we have. And so, again, you know, Michelle mentioned it, but just those businesses need to take advantage of that. And from SBA standpoint, we truly thank you guys for doing what you do.
Hannah, any closing thoughts here you'd like to share?
Well, just access your resources, access SBA, access Small Business Development Center, your SCORE partners, your chamber. For example, you know, we had 4,000 masks that were donated by Lowe's Home Improvement. Thank you, Lowe's. And they're sitting in our chamber. We're saying, hey, if you're a business that needs them, again, you have resources out there. And Congressman, I just thank you for what you're doing in Washington. I don't think that any business or any person really understood the intersection of business and policy until this happened. And it required a lot of work and a lot of bipartisanship to get what has been done. And I really appreciate it. As you move forward, again, school restart, safe and effective and good for our business community, payroll tax credits, P4 targeted towards the hardest hit businesses. Again, we thank you for what you can do for us in Washington.
Of course. Michelle?
You know, I echo what both Bill and Hannah said, and just to thank you and your colleagues for all the work that you've done to make this happen and to make it happen as quickly as you have. It has made a huge difference, and I know we've worked with a lot of people out there that you know, at least they felt like they could have a sigh of relief and move forward. Using your resources, we all are doing a great job of working together. You know, there are some other resources out there from a financing standpoint. I can't say that there are a ton of them right now, but there are some others that we can help you look into. And just be cognizant of the fact that our world has changed. And as a business owner, we need to be thinking about the new reality and getting somewhat creative about how do we rebuild businesses to be resilient and to be able to withstand something like this that happens in the future. So we need to really start looking at how we modify our business models to be more stable. And there are some great techniques for doing that, some great strategies to pursue, and we're happy to help people with it if they want to look at that.
Excellent. Well, listen, I just want to thank everyone here on the panel. William, for such an excellent job. Hannah, thank you for all your work down there at the Chamber. Michelle, great seeing you, and thank you so much for all the services you all provide to local and small businesses. I tell you, our area is extremely fortunate to have folks like y'all working on their behalf. And it's an honor for us to continue working with the local chambers and the U.S. Chamber. We're thrilled to get a bipartisanship award from the U.S. Chamber, and you know, that's a badge of honor for us in working across South to deliver results for the Lowcountry. And I'm exceptionally proud of our local offices, both down Beaufort and in Mount Pleasant. Out of all the freshman members, our offices have closed the highest number of cases than anyone else, any other freshman member in Congress. So
wow.
That's a testament to the hard work and from our office, but also the resources. Like Hannah mentioned, people have to take advantage of these resources. They're there for the small businesses. So we're here as a community, and the only way we're going to get through this is if we work together. And people shouldn't shy away or second guess or even pause in reaching out for help, because these resources are here, these lifelines are here, and we're only gonna get through this if we continue working together. So thank you all so much. Hope everyone uses these resources. They're posted in the chat box. And if anyone has any more questions for our office, or if we can help, I want to give you that number again. It's 843-352-7572. That's 352-7572. Always happy to help and stand willing to serve. Again, thank you everyone for joining us here today. Hope everyone has a safe and happy weekend. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.